Hey everybody, welcome to Read It Again's online author series. Today we have Deborah Mantella. Hey Deborah, how's it going?
Hi. Well, so far. How about for you?
Good. Okay, so I'll read Deborah's intro here. Deborah is a transplant from the North. She is taught in various cities in the Northeast and Midwest, now resides in Georgia, lives outside of Atlanta with her husband. Deborah is a member of the Atlanta Writers Club, the Authors Guild, and the Society of Children Writers and Illustrators. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Yay. It's been a while.
Okay, so I met Deborah. She came to our Christmas party, and she was just the nicest person. So I was like, yeah, let's read your book.
Okay. Yeah.
Our general fiction book club read it, and we liked it. We had a really good discussion about it, and we had a couple of new people join us, which was really good. One of the things that we talked about. Oh, okay. First, before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about My Sweet Vidalia?
Okay. It takes place in the 50s and 60s in rural Georgia, and it is a story of a young woman who falls for a bad guy. And up until this point, she doesn't really have much of a support system. And then her spirit child enters the picture to help guide her. And I guess I probably shouldn't go into how for those who haven't read it. But I will say that I started out wanting to write a mother-daughter story. And I wanted to flip the roles, and so the daughter would be acting as more of a docent than the listener, the daughter, but she was a spirit child, so that limited what she could offer as guidance for her mom, who was in this terrible situation. I wanted to write the mother-daughter story, and nobody wants to read about perfect characters. So I had to create some characters and put them in the worst situation I could think of, which was domestic violence, and watch how they figured out how to get out of it without the daughter actually telling the mother what to do, because the mom is a 17-year-old. And if any of you, I have 3 children, they're grown now, but if anyone has a 17-year-old, they know they don't really listen to advice. So that's kind of the reasoning I used behind her. I also had to know that things would turn out okay in order to write it. Okay, did I explain?
Yeah, I was going to ask you described the narrator, I think I read somewhere, as omnipotent.
Omniscient.
Yeah.
All-knowing.
So I felt like, okay, when I read it, I felt like it was kind of a mixture. It had elements of Lovely Bones and Beloved, because Beloved also has that.
I've heard that so many times.
I'm sure you have, because Beloved kind of has that. Well, let's give it away. It's kind of a spirit child. This all-knowing presence, and you don't find out until later in the book who she is. And she narrates the book, but then she also shows up, so it's creepier. So, very good book. Highly recommend it. So I wanted to talk about. You talked about a little bit, but I'd like to talk more about the narrator. Like, why did Okay, it's so unusual. I love it.
Okay, so I knew. When I decided this was the story I wanted to write, I knew that's not really a spoiler. I'm happy to tell people that, because it's hard to get through some parts of it. But I needed to know, so I needed my narrator to know. But I also needed the readers to find out what was going along as it happened, barring any interference from Cieli Mae, the spirit child. She was there to guide quietly, and it was hard for her several times to not say anything. And the only reason she was able to stick with the story, I think, in as I know her so well, was because she knew it was going to work out. Things were going to work out, but she just had to learn the hard way, as people do.
As I was reading it, I couldn't decide if she was an actual like a ghost, or if she was Vidalia's like inner voice talking to herself. And I felt that was interesting, because I couldn't decide which it was, and it made me want to read more.
Oh, good. Okay. I kind of had in mind almost like a sixth sense while I was writing the sixth sense while I was writing it. And Vidalia, I don't know, people seem to be watching a lot of Netflix. Hi, Carla. And we just finished Dead to Me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And it just hit me when I was thinking about this, that if Vidalia were current day and not in rural Georgia, she would be pretty similar to Linda Cardinelli's character. And I can't remember her name, but I do remember the actress. Because she saw the good in everybody. She wanted to see the good in everybody. And I wanted to make sure she kept that through the whole story. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much.
So the book had a Southern Gothic feel, and I always love a good Southern Gothic. Mm-hmm. Do you consider, and which is interesting, do you consider a Southern Gothic, especially since you aren't from the South?
Mm-hmm. That's just, and I tell people this, and I probably sound crazy to anyone who doesn't write, but that's the way the voices came to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I heard it.
You heard it.
I heard their voices.
Did she come and speak to you and take you over?
Tell me what to say.
Yeah, I love that.
Tell me what to say. And actually, and I don't know if I said this to you before, but other people have heard it, I'm sure. I did have a different plan going into the story. Mm-hmm. But when I got to, and I won't give this one away, but when I got to that certain point, and I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about, mm-hmm. I realized she wouldn't do that, what I thought she was going to do at a crucial mm-hmm. moment. Mm-hmm. So I had to rewrite that, because that's not true to who she is. And I didn't want to take away her goodness, but I still felt justified. But still, I just didn't want to. I mean, I just couldn't do it because it wasn't her. Mm-hmm. I knew her so well by then.
So, are you a pantser, a plotter?
I am maybe a combination, more a pantser though, I think. I mean, I like to know where the story's going, but then I kind of, once I develop the characters, then I have to follow them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, Carla says it's the perfect Southern voice, and you did an excellent job. I'm from Florida, so I don't consider myself a Southerner.
Okay, I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, originally.
So what kind of research did you do? Did you just sit down and listen to people?
Well, I do a lot of, I love reading all different genres, and I listen. I'm a listener. I listen more than I talk. Mm-hmm. And also my oldest daughter's an actress in Atlanta here. And in high school, of course, not now because she's a professional, but in high school, we ran lines and the dialects and all that. So it really wasn't that hard for me to do it. I just heard the voices. Plus, my critique group, I had a lot of born here Southerners, yeah. And I had, and one of the gentlemen was a Green Beret, ex-Green Beret, retired. But he helped me an awful lot with all the guns and ammunition part. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and when we first,
we're giving just little details away from the book. Yeah. You guys can be like, spirit child, guns, ammunition. That sounds interesting.
I usually tell people, when I tell people it's narrated by a spirit child, but then I quickly say, don't let that throw you. Mm-hmm. Because it's not all spirited child.
Yeah. No, you feel like when you read it that she's actually there next to her and that she can physically control her surroundings, but then she just doesn't. That was the impressionation, and that's what I got from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that took a little bit of getting used to as I was writing, because it's hard to not have a character have impact on the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a few times I said something about her eating or something like that. Just, and when one of my readers was reading, it's like,
Yeah.
no.
At one point, the mom asks her to watch the kids, watch the boys.
Right.
I'm like, can she? And I'm like, well, maybe she's
can
not
watch.
in the lady's head. Maybe she is a spirit
Watch.
person.
Not that she could do anything about it, but she could watch. Yeah. And she actually, okay, so my theory or my belief, and they're my characters, so, you know, what I say goes. She was meant to be born. It was an act of man who prevented her from. Okay, but she was meant to be. She was a child who was meant to come to this world. I don't really know for how long. I kind of have an idea from how the book went, but she was meant to come and guide her. That was her job. Mm-hmm. That was her preordained mission. I mean, she could have turned it down. There's a lot of stuff I took out of the book that I had in the book before.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was given the option. She could have turned it down and gone to a different family.
So
it's not in the book, though.
I was gonna say, the spousal abuse is a big theme in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Another one. Couldn't put it down. Very cool.
Oh, hi. Hey.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. That's always good to hear.
So the abuse in the book, I know you wanted to pick a difficult circumstance, but why did you specifically go for domestic abuse? That was interesting.
It worked with the time and the circumstance and my characters. Mm-hmm. It just worked. And it's not, man, I just heard a story yesterday of a man stalking the ex and he killed her. Mm-hmm. But it's still going on, and we have a lot more resources these days, of course, but we still have an awful long way to go.
What about it takes place in the 50s? Why not make it a contemporary tale?
This is the way the characters presented themselves to make him. And that period is very interesting. Mm-hmm. Of course, you have the civil rights, and it just was a very women's movement. Not yet, Mm-hmm. So it was kind of seemed to me the right time to set it.
You mentioned earlier you're a big reader. Who are you reading right now?
I started Dear Edward.
Okay.
I really like it, but like I said, I'm having a hard time
concentrating.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about that before the interview went live. I suggest audiobooks. Or is it great way to?
I am going to try. I'm going to do that next. And what is it
this week? And half of them are audio.
Oh, so it's Libra FM is the one that supports the bookstores.
Yep.
Okay.
And we do have copies of my Sweet Vidalia in stock, and Deborah lives close enough that we can get them autographed if anybody's interested.
I can. I'll be run over.
Yeah.
I love to.
So, what were some of the authors you read growing up?
Oh, have you heard of Karen and With Love from Karen?
With Love from Karen.
That was one of the first books when I was growing up. What a nerd I was. I used to save my allowance and walk up to the drugstore. Not the drug, the Woolworths on the Avenue, to buy a paperback book. Mm-hmm. And they had this little carousel, and the first book I bought with that money when I was allowed to walk up to the Avenue by myself was Karen, and then I devoured that book, and then it was To Karen with Love or From Karen with Love. It was written by her mother. It's a young lady who was born with cerebral palsy. She was born 3 months too early. That might have influenced, but anyway. That was one of the first books I think I fell in love with. And that was nonfiction. And I am generally more of a fiction reader. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then the next one was The Trouble with Angels.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that one or seen that?
I've seen that one, yeah.
You seen that movie?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that one. And Nancy Drew.
Mm-hmm.
I read all the Nancy Drew,
Mm-hmm.
all the Nancy Drew. In fact, my dad was such a saver that when we cleaned out the basement for him, I found a box of my Nancy Drews. Of course, they were not in very good shape. I couldn't really keep them. Yeah, but he had them. Yeah.
So, who would you say were your influences growing up, like in writing?
My dad.
Your dad?
My dad was. Yeah,
Oh,
my dad could have been an English teacher,
mm-hmm.
but he was an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
But he was. Yeah, he was.
So he
was my guy.
Love of reading.
Yes. Oh, yes. Reading and writing, and he's very difficult. He was very strict grammarian with me. Mm-hmm. Now, when my brother came along, that was a different story. He wasn't that interested, but so I was like, for a while there, I was the favorite child. Don't tell my brother I said that.
No, I think
but as far as that, in that area, I told a book club I had recently. I told them a story about. I went to Catholic school.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
Okay, so okay. Mm-hmm. Then I went years before you did, so it was probably a lot more strict. But you did what you were told to do. I don't know. Did you even have nuns in your classroom?
We did have nuns, but it was run by the Christian Brothers, so they're a little bit more lax.
Okay. All right. Well, I had nuns. I had sisters.
The nuns with the rulers.
The nuns with the clickers and the rulers and the yes. And we had a project. We had an essay to write on fall. Mm-hmm. And we were supposed to start the essay with, I was walking down the street one day, and that's how we were supposed to start it. And I went home with my assignment, and I couldn't make that line work for me. It was just not a good hook. Mm-hmm. So, but this is Catholic school. Mm-hmm. So, I wrote what I wanted to. I wrote, talked to my dad about it. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to get in trouble, but I couldn't write it the way I didn't want to write it, and I was like 10 or 11 at the time. And we talked about it, and he said, I think you should do what you want to do. So I started it, Hail Mother Nature, full of grace, and then I described the fall day. So then, I'm taking too long with the story. Okay, I'm trying to make it quick.
No, I think this is interesting.
So then went into school. I'm like, okay, I know I broke the rules, and I was Miss Goody Two-Shoes too. I mean, I got called on and this and that. My shoes were always polished, my saddle shoes. So I'm waiting, and sister is calling on the kids to read. We had to stand up and read. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh gosh. Okay, so then she calls on me, so I stand up, take a deep breath, read, and then you could have heard a pin drop. It was so quiet. Mm-hmm. And then she put her hands on the desk, like so. Mm-hmm. And she said, that was beautiful. Oh. And so that's what I guess got me hooked. It was a good moment. I mean, it was a real good moment. Of course, my classmates didn't really like it because they followed the rules and I didn't. But that's okay. They forgave me. Eventually. But
I love that story.
Moment for me.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Now, if I had asked my mom, she might have said something different. So that's why I asked my dad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're a teacher. What do you teach?
I did teach in my other life. I taught Montessori school. Okay. Early childhood. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was fun. I loved it. Oh, and I had one of my students, Melinda, looked me up online on Facebook. She found me on Facebook. And this was a long, long, long time ago when we were first married and we lived in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I taught in Montessori school. Mm-hmm. And she looked me up and she said, are you the same Mrs. Mantella who taught at Hansel and Gretel Montessori school? I'm like, yes. Is this Melinda from my class? Yes. And then she posted about a project that we did in the classroom, which I had completely forgotten about. And I love her and thank her for reminding me of this. We had a caterpillar. We had a little home for him in a box. And she reminded me how we watched him grow. We fed him. And then when he turned into a butterfly, we took it outside, the whole class. And she said, and the opera, Madame Butterfly, Puccini's Madame Butterfly was blaring in the background, and we let the butterfly go free. And then we all had a great big group hug.
Yeah.
So that was like one of my special Facebook moments. Yeah. I'm getting off track here. Okay.
Oh, it's okay. I like it's a sweet story. So I did have a question here, and we kind of answered it. But if you were to slap a genre label on my Sweet Vidalia, what would it be?
I think Southern fiction.
Yeah, I think it's
women's Southern fiction
is what I would do, because it's a little darker, and it's got a little extra woo-woo in it because of the spiritual.
Yeah. So, yeah. I've heard that too.
Yeah, and it's one of my
favorite. I don't care what you call it, as long as you read it.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Let's see. What were we talking about? We were talking about childhood authors, our favorite. Are you working on anything right now?
Yes, I am. And that's another reason besides the pandemic. My brain is kind of mush because I've been kind of in the editing cellar for quite a while. And I was so afraid I'm going to start talking about the characters in the other book when you ask me questions about Vidalia. I'm trying to keep it a little close to the chest now. I have to finish some things because I thought I was finished, and then I got a completely different idea for the ending. So I'm working on fixing that, which of course means I have to go through the whole thing again and see if any of those changes affected what happened earlier. But I was thinking of something. We were talking about domestic violence.
Yes.
Domestic abuse. And I don't know if you would remember The Burning Bed movie. Okay, you're too young. Do you know Francine.
Burning Bed, 1984. I was alive. Thank you.
Farrah Fawcett was in the movie, made-for-TV movie. It was based on Francine Hughes' story of abuse. Oh, if you haven't seen it, you have to see it.
Now that I see the cover, it looks familiar. So I think I remember it.
So that was like, as we know, 50 years ago, domestic violence was not considered a crime of consequence.
Yeah.
And then it was a little more than 40 years ago that movie came out, and it changed people's perceptions overnight. Farrah Fawcett did a fantastic job.
And she dealt with her own abuse later in life too.
She did. She dealt with an awful lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But she was a really talented actress. I think she might have been limited by certain things, but she was very talented. But that was one of her best. If you haven't seen her, if you haven't seen it in a while, I need to watch it again. But it did leave an impression on me, and I thought.
So you said everything changed almost overnight. The
perception changed.
Yeah.
It became part of the national conversation, where it wasn't before. And even as far as domestic violence and dating, people didn't talk about it at all. And that's why, sometimes moms, they buy the book for their daughters, because I've had a few tell me, I'm not quite sure about this boyfriend, or I'm not quite sure about this husband, and then they'll buy the book. It's kind of, I consider it kind of a cautionary tale in that respect. There's
a great one. Is it St. Cloud who wrote Safe People?
I don't know that one.
Here it is. How to find relations that are good for you and avoid those that aren't. I highly recommend it. And then
I'll have to add that to my, okay.
I'll put a link in the comments. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now. It's also a workbook, or it has a workbook that you can work through. And this is the same guy who wrote Boundaries, which is also an excellent book.
Got it.
Safe People.
Okay, let's see.
I just posted the ISBN. Let me try. Oh my goodness. So
I'm not going to tell you about my next book. I'm not going to give you the name, but I will show you this book that I'm reading.
Yeah.
to give you a hint.
Vampires. Mm-hmm.
It's very different. It's a completely different mother-daughter relationship. I'll say that. I like to write mother-daughter stories.
Stories. Okay.
I guess that's my thing.
Safe people. Yeah. Here, I'll look up emotional vampires. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And there's a what's the other one?
By the way, if anybody has a question or a comment, if you leave a comment, I can post it directly to the video. So feel free to join in and ask questions or recommend books that you like, and you could become part of our conversation. But yeah.
So the book club that you had a book club discussion, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. Those, sometimes they get heated.
Ours wasn't. It's kind of hard to get heated when you do it over Zoom. It's not.
That's true. Yeah.
It's not hard, but it's easier to separate yourself because you're not in the same room with people. You can't physically feel their emotions rolling off of them when they get upset. It's a little disconnected. It's better than nothing, to be honest, but it's a little disconnected.
Yeah.
So,
go
ahead.
One of my first book clubs, one of my first book clubs, there was a woman, and I knew she didn't get it or didn't like it, it was not a good vibe.
Yeah. Wasn't a good fit.
Yeah. And she said, why didn't she just shoot him? I would have just shot him.
And then we did discuss that. Why didn't you take action sooner?
Right. But it usually takes women 7 tries to leave a relationship if they even get out alive.
Yeah.
So I did an awful lot of research into it, and so I wanted to do it in real time. I wanted to show she had to do her due diligence.
And plus, you mentioned she's young, like 17 when this started?
Yeah, she was 17 when it started. Yeah. So and plus she didn't have support. So, and then thank God for Ruby Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My favorite comment, I think at one of the book clubs, was you gave us a new hero in Ruby Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking, I have this little thing. This is my symbolic. This is Vidalia.
Yeah.
This is Cieli Mae. And this is Ruby Pearl.
Oh.
For me.
That's cute. I like that. Yeah. I did notice you had all those children. That's true. How many pregnancies did she have?
She had a lot. She had a lot of miscarriages. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I know that was hard. It was hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to stay true to stories that I had heard, unfortunately, and read. And it had to take that long for her to learn. And that's why I said Cieli Mae was meant to be there. So she was meant to be there as long as she was needed. And she was. That's what she did. She just stayed as long as she accomplished her mission. Ooh, I'm saying too much, maybe.
No, you're fine. You figure that out pretty quickly. She has a guardian angel spirit, and I like the idea that the voice actually came from her than something. That her child's. You know what I mean? Like I like to think that it was her inside voice saying, you know what, we could do this situation different, and then she shushes herself up, like shh. I'm thinking, you know what I mean?
I know.
See, she agrees. Carol agrees. It didn't give anything away.
Okay. Thanks, Carl.
Well, okay. When I read books like about domestic violence, or a couple months ago I read one about a kid being kidnapped. It's one of those things where I'll admit this as a bookseller, I will skip to the end to see if it's happy before I commit to it.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not something I ever do, but I'm like, if I am going to go through this emotional turmoil, I need to know if it ends well or okay,
Yeah. Well, in fact, I did have a steady critique group that I went to while I was writing it, and it was suggested that I'm not going to say what incidents, but something. Oh wait, I probably can't say this. Well, anyway, something that was they wanted something to happen. I said, oh, no, she's been through enough.
Yeah.
And that was my defense because I just personally, yeah.
Yeah, she's been through enough. So 17, how old was she when the book ends?
It was about 11 years it took.
11 years. Wow.
10, 11 years. And that's.
Yeah. And she met a lot of helpers along the way, which she built up a support network by the end.
She did.
But I mean, it's so sad.
She did. And also with Ruby Pearl, same thing. Ruby Pearl was a person who saw the good in that. And that's what drew them together. And before the time that they met, before they became friends, I was questioned about this before. I don't think Vidalia was ready to accept Ruby Pearl before that time. It was just, how people come into your life for a reason and at the right time sometimes, or I think they usually do. So that's kind of what drove that.
And she was needed when she was needed. Yeah, no, I totally get that. I have friends that have come into my life at the right time, and you look back and you're like, whoa, how'd that happen?
Did I do it? But
what was I going to ask you?
Oh, I'll tell you a funny rejection story that I got.
Yeah.
Let's see. My agent, who has recently retired, so I'm on that hunt again. She's retired from agenting. She sent it. She while she was sending the book away, we got a very nice rejection, kind of nice rejection. The editor and her assistant both agreed. They loved the storyline. They loved the voices. They loved this. They loved that. But a spirit child wouldn't talk that way, is what they said. So we just gotta laugh.
Well, what does spirit child sound like?
That's what we wanted to know.
Yeah.
No.
What's your advice to aspiring authors?
Read, write, and don't be afraid to cut. Don't be afraid to cut. It's really hard to cut your own words, like they say. It's true. You might fall in love with, and I've been doing this past 2 weeks, so I know what I'm talking about. You can fall in love with a passage and read the page, and you really like that passage, but something tells you maybe that doesn't belong there, but then you take it out and you feel like you lost 20 pounds just by doing that, and the story flows much better. So read, write. And
you belong to the Atlanta Writers Connect, right?
Atlanta Writers Club, yeah.
Right,
yeah. We were supposed to have our book club last week. Not that it would have mattered, but as far as the timing, but that was canceled, of course. You had already, that's why we're this week.
When I had a customer in yesterday, and she was looking for a book on how to write a, what do they call it when you send like a blurb into publishers?
The query letter?
Yeah, how to write a query letter. And so I pointed her to your group. I was like, if you really want to learn stuff, you need to belong to another group of authors that can help you get through this.
And there are also you can find a lot of stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, I could look up one of the articles. I can't remember the name.
We were just talking about how one of your favorite books is Stephen King's on writing. That's a great book. The teachers here, they assign it all the time, so we keep it new in stock. Here, I'll put a link for that. What did you pull out of Stephen King's book?
I don't know. What didn't I? I mean, I want to listen to. Well, that one I do have on audio. I read the book when it first came out. Then I got the next edition. Then I bought the audio book.
Who reads the audio book? Is it him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of any specifics. I just know that I just love the whole thing. The toolbox,
Do you ever use writing prompts when you're dry and you just need something to get on the page?
No, what I do is when I stop writing, I usually, like, I don't stop at the end of a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I start the next chapter.
Oh.
So that when I go back, then I have, and I do that sometimes when I'm reading too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just check the next, start the first page of the next chapter, the first paragraph.
Now, see, if I did that, I would never put the book down.
If you what?
If I did that, I would never put the book down. It would just keep going, and it'd be like 3 or 4 in the morning. So just a few more pages. I just need to get to the middle of this chapter. I just need. Oh, see, I started another chapter, and now I have to keep going to finish it. That's.
Yeah, in my Sweet Vidalia, the chapters were really short, and I had several people thank me for that. They said, "Oh, I can read one more chapter."
It's not, and I do like that. It's not huge. It's like it's perfectly good size. It's a good. I like that size book.
Well, when I started, well, I think it's nice when book club books are shorter rather than longer. I'll just say that.
I like a shorter book that has a lot of punch. So there was one book that we read last year, and it was another Southern Gothic, and it had a lot in it. We really pulled that sucker apart. And the majority of the book club members didn't like the book until we sat there and we pulled it apart and we discussed it. And by the end, they liked it. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. It's okay. It was very good. You might like it. I'm asking Nicole. It's red on the cover. Oh, I sound like one of my customers. It's blue.
It's blue. It has white letters.
Yeah. I'll have to look it up.
Oh, wait. I forgot to tell you, though. Oh, yeah, go ahead. The person who was argumentative about the time frame, she was fine by the end. By the end of it. Yeah, she was good. She was really good. In fact, she came to one of my other events. So it all worked out. The one that that wanted her to have killed him. Not that she was the only one, but she was pretty insistent and was my first book club.
I remember. Seeing Unburied Sing. Have you read that? Oh, that's such a beautiful book. Sing Unburied Sing.
No. You're going to put it in the link?
I'm going to put a link in the comment. Okay. Oh, it was so good.
Okay.
Oh, it's apparently a series. I did not know that. Oh my gosh. No, and it's short. And it's one of those books that if it had been any longer, I just couldn't handle it because it was just too intense. And there's a ghost in it. The main character is a boy, and he has an abusive mother. You would love it.
Okay.
And so it's told from his point of view, and then it switches to the mother's point of view, and the mother doesn't realize she's as horrible as she is.
Oh,
I mean, like when I parent my kids, I think I'm amazing, and then you sit back later and you're like, okay, maybe I was a little mean.
Well, you'll like my next book.
Yeah,
you'll like my next book. Yeah, I'm doing different voices in the next book. Yeah.
So, okay, so do we have an ETA on your next book?
No. Not at this point.
Well,
hopefully a year away. Hopefully less than a year, maybe.
We'll definitely throw you a party when it's released.
Okay, yay.
Yeah, we'll do that. We like having parties here. We had a really good Christmas party, and Deborah came with a bunch of other book.
That was so fun. That was fun.
I have it, but I haven't read it. You should read it, Carol.
Oh, that one. She'll like it. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. It's very good.
I was going to say something about the chapters, because this was my first. Now, the book that I'm writing now was actually the first book that I wrote, and then I put it away. There was too much stuff in it, so I had to put it away and write this one. But when I was writing this one, I was trying to make the chapters longer. I was trying to say, I was trying to do a more conventional length. And it wasn't working for me. It's just like, no, I just have to end the chapter when the chapter ends. And so that's what I did. And I'm glad I did. I
think chapters work well with your writing style. I do. I don't feel like they should have been longer.
Oh, good. I'm
yeah,
glad.
I think this is perfectly fine. I think it's easier. It's not that it makes it easier to read, but it's more like little snippets. And I like that as a writing style over a really long chapter. And plus, you feel like you're accomplishing something as you read it. So,
yeah.
I seriously was like, oh, how did I get to chapter 10 already? Awesome. Let's see here. Yeah. Well, by next year, I'm hoping we have events again, and maybe one of our first book launch.
That'd be great. I would love it. I would love it. Yeah.
Okay, Deborah. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you for meeting with us. And when things get back to normal, we'll do something, even if it's not for your next book, but maybe just my Sweet Vidalia.
Okay. Sounds good.
So support your local independent bookstore. So even
Please
if it's we do ship, however, support your local independent. And we have Deborah's book in stock, and she is willing to sign it. I've sold several, so I might need. Can you send us some
book plates?
Yeah, or just drop them off.
Sure.
Because our entire book club bought one, so we need them for everybody. So yeah,
just send me a note. Let me know how much.
Being the third person in our conversation today.
Hey, Carla. I did Carla's book club. We did a virtual book club. It was great. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
It was great. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Support your local independent bookstore and read My Sweet Vidalia.
Yes, please. Okay. All right. And let me hear from you. I like to know. I like to, get feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks. Bye.